All right, welcome to everybody. This is the Counter Media Podcast. Unfortunately, Gary couldn't make it today, but we're trying to make it work. In his absence, the show must go on. Dealing with all kinds of technical difficulties, but we will get there. I'm just learning how to go live. Unfortunately, I can't get it to go live on Rumble or X, so we're just on YouTube and Facebook. Glad to have you here, and bear with me. But yeah, we've got lots to talk about. Got lots of news going on. Trump's hostage envoy has been talking to Hamas to try and get some kind of a deal. Israel isn't too happy about that. There's all kinds of violence going on in Syria, mainly against the Alawites and some Christians, and that's kind of a whole complicated thing. Plus, there's plenty more news to go. Hopefully I'm live. Let me just double check. I'm actually live. And I'm not just talking to myself. Bear with me 1 second. Where are we? Say hello in the chat if you're there. Where are we? Oh, there we go. Good evening from Arizona, Mark. Thank you very much. Hello, we do have people out there. So we are live. So I might just tuck straight into an interview that Trump has done recently. Evening, JJ. Glad you're with us. Hopefully some more people start piling in. A little bit late, but we're getting there. But yeah, so Trump did this interview with, I forget how to pronounce her name, Maria Bartiromo. I knew I shouldn't have attempted that one, but let's check it out, shall we?
Let me go back to what happened in the Oval Office the other day. I call it a smackdown of Zelensky.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for joining us.
Looked really rough, but then again, at the end of the day, you may have your deal back. So was that all the art of the deal? Or what specifically ticked you off?
Well, you know, he was able to, it was like taking candy from a baby, what he did. He's a smart guy, and he's a tough guy. And he took money out of this country under Biden like candy from a baby. It was so easy with that same attitude. And I just don't think he's grateful. We gave him, in my opinion, $350 billion. Europe is in for $100 billion. We gave him $350 billion, and he's talking about the fact that they have fought. And there's a bravery because somebody has to use the weapons. But without those weapons, don't forget, I was the one that gave him the javelins that was able to knock down all the tanks.
He sort of continues with his usual thing there. He provided the javelins, Trump provided the blankets, a few other things we've heard before. So I'll skip ahead a little bit.
Energy's gone down and interest rates have gone up over the last week. That's a big thing. I love that.
Do you expect Zelensky to come back? Do you expect to do that rare earth minerals deal?
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll happen.
Are you sure there's the content that you think there is there? Because some people were questioning if, in fact, there is the titanium and the lithium, all those the rare earth minerals. Do you think it is rich with those things?
Well, I do. I mean, I've had it checked. By the best. It's very valuable. But with all that being said, Biden should have never put up $350 billion. He should have equalized with Europe. All he had to do is say, you got to stay even with us. They're in for 100.
And, stuff I've heard before about Europe not paying their fair share. That's an interesting question about the minerals, because I've also heard that there's not too much in Ukraine. There's probably more in the Russian-occupied areas. And, of course, Russia has heaps in, mainland Russia or whatever. And there has been talk about doing some kind of deal there, possibly with Russia, to get them. But, Trump says there's plenty of minerals in the rest of Ukraine. I'm not too sure. There's some people disagree with Trump on that one. But just skip ahead a little bit.
I spoke with the president of Poland the other day. President Duda has great respect for you.
Yeah.
And I said to him, what if the U.S. walks away and stays away? Here's what he said. Without the United States, do you believe that Europe is capable of offering meaningful security to Ukraine?
I would like to believe it, but experience to date shows that this has not been the case. The entire history so far of the last 3 years of the war shows that without American support, Ukraine will not survive.
Are you comfortable with that? The fact that you walked away and Ukraine may not survive?
Well, it may not survive anyway, but, we have some weaknesses with Russia. It takes two. Look, it was not going to happen, that war, and it happened. So now we're stuck with this mess. Think of what he
Might not exist anyway. It's kind of an interesting sort of statement, and probably true from the Polish guy there, that there isn't much chance of that. Also say hello to Eric, Freya and Laurie. Thanks for being here and bearing with me. If you're coming in late, Gary couldn't make it tonight, but we're trying to make it work, trying to keep somewhat consistent. If one of us can't make it, hopefully the other will keep to our regular schedule of Monday and Thursday at 8 p.m. We're about 15 minutes late tonight, but that's, it's not too bad, I suppose. We're still here. We're making it happen. Back to Trump.
Ukraine and Israel were both attacked by aggressors. Is America treating both countries similarly? Are they treating the aggressors similarly?
I think so. Look, they're
Are
very
you favoring one over the other?
They're very different places, okay? Very, very different. You're talking about different levels of power. You're talking about different parts of the world. The Middle East has been under attack forever. It's been, when wasn't it under attack? And then we came along and did the Abraham Accords, which was unheard of.
Have you been as tough on Russia as you've been on Hamas? I mean, what do you want to say to
Well,
critics?
I've been much tougher because I haven't done to Hamas. That's been Israel that has to do to Hamas. But Israel does tell me what's going on. I think I've been very tough to Russia. Tougher than anybody's ever been to Russia, if you think about it. First of all, we had the Russia hoax, which was a very bad thing. Could have led to a war. And that was started by Schiff and all these lowlifes.
I know.
They're total lowlifes. And it was a fake deal, the 51 intelligence agencies. I took all their passes away. They can't participate anymore.
That was another story. We'll just quickly skip to that. Trump's apparently revoked security clearances for Biden's aides that signed the Hunter disinfo letter, because before that previous election, some bad news was coming out about the Hunter Biden laptop, and it was obviously suppressed, and all these people said it was Russian disinfo when it wasn't. It's a bit of election interference there, so Trump's revoked their passes, which is pretty awesome.
These guys know it came from Hunter Biden's laptop from hell, which came from his bathroom and or his bedroom, okay? Not a pretty sight. But this was a Hunter Biden thing. They said it was from Russia. No, I've been very tough. Remember this, I'm the one that stopped the Russian pipeline, Nordstream 2. I stopped it. Biden came in and he approved it. I'm the one that put sanctions on Russia. I'm the one that gave the javelins against Russia.
It's a little bit interesting, this Nord Stream 2 comment, because, yes, he did put sanctions on companies working on that pipeline, I think in 2019. By that stage, it was almost completed. And I think eventually they did complete it, despite those sort of sanctions. And then when Biden came in, technically, you could argue Biden stopped it. Though I'm sure Biden probably didn't know what was going on, but it was blown up, probably by America, They didn't really... There isn't much coverage about who's responsible for that. I think they tried to put out some story saying Ukraine was responsible for that, but I really doubt Ukraine would have sort of just done this operation by themselves. They're sort of very dependent on America. They don't do too much stuff independently. So I'm pretty sure that was America who did that. And in fact, what do we got here? When it happened, this Polish MP tweeted this: "Thank you, USA." He was happy that Biden actually did stop it by blowing it up. And this guy, he's I think he's currently the Polish foreign minister. He was a member of parliament of the EU at the time, I suppose. He was also in the news recently, sort of, for having a bit of a spat with Elon Musk. Oh yeah, because Elon Musk, he said, my Starlink system is the backbone of the Ukrainian army. Their entire front line would collapse if I turned it off. Which is probably true, at least somewhat true. What I'm sickened by is years of slaughter and a stalemate that Ukraine will inevitably lose. Anyone who really cares, really thinks, and really understands want the meat grinder to stop. Peace now. Pretty good comment. Can't agree with that. So this guy that thanked the USA for blowing up the Nordstream pipeline a little while ago, he responded, Starlinks for Ukraine are paid for by the Polish Digitization Ministry at the cost of about $50 million per year. The ethics of threatening the victim of aggression apart, if SpaceX proves to be an unreliable provider, we will be forced to look for other suppliers. And Elon Musk clapped back, be quiet, small man. You pay a tiny fraction of the cost and there is no substitute for Starlink. They're very ungrateful, very characteristic of Ukraine. Ukraine are very grateful to Elon Musk, who's providing the Starlink. There was talks about him threatening to sort of cut it off, but I don't think that was true. At least Elon Musk said that wasn't true. But anyway, just a bit of a tangent about the Nordstream stuff there. Get back to Trump.
No, I've been very tough, but I got along well with Putin. And because I got along...
So, the other guy, I always love a bit of Chris. Chris is always right. See, now, because Gary, he couldn't make it tonight. And while he isn't here, to get your comments up, you'll need to say, Chris is always right. Usually Gary says you need to say, Gary is always right to get your comments brought up. The rules have changed now, at least for this stream, possibly forever. Who knows? Even when Gary comes back, I think we should enforce this new rule that the Chris is right comments should come to the top. So I appreciate that, God's offspring. Glad to see you here. And yeah, it's true, Alex. I think it was Ukraine. I think it was Ukraine. They benefit the most. It shut off money to Russia. Ukraine did benefit, but I don't think they would have the capability or even the agency or sovereignty to do that. But anyway. I can't confirm or deny the reasons for Gary not being here. I'm assuming that's what that is. But anyway.
Got along well. They say, he's so... Nobody's ever been... Putin would be the first to say it. Nobody's been tougher than Trump. And Biden hasn't been tough. Biden's done nothing. He was a weak, pathetic man.
So is there anything else you want to say to the critics who say you chose a side in the Ukraine-Russia story, and that's Russia? Because, you called Zelensky a dictator and you had the fight.
Nobody has been tougher on Russia than Donald Trump. Nobody. And they know that. They know that. Just look at the things I just told you. The pipeline, I stopped it. The biggest job they've ever done was the pipeline, Nordstream 2. Nobody ever heard of it until I came along. They were building it happily. They were going to supply Germany and everybody else all over Europe. And what did I do? I stopped it. The biggest economic job they've ever had, I stopped it. Biden got in. On the second day, he approved it. He said, let it go forward. It was totally stopped. Just that one thing alone tells you everything. No.
Look, I sort of appreciate Trump has to look tough on Russia. One of the main reasons I supported Trump back in 2016 was because he made a comment about Russia and Ukraine. Because, Crimea was already annexed and people were talking about wanting to get that back. But Trump made a comment on the campaign trail in 2015, 2016 where he said, Crimea is gone. Is it worth World War III to get it back? And he was sort of talking about making peace with Russia when there was all this hysteria about a new Cold War with Russia. And I sort of liked him for his sort of peace credentials there. And then what happened? We heard this sort of Russia thing, as Trump calls it, the Russia collusion thing, where they basically tried to make out that Russia put Trump into power and Trump was a puppet of Russia. And it's always been my opinion that they did this to tie his hands because he probably wanted to make peace with Russia. He probably wanted to take some sanctions off and sort of normalize relations. But with this narrative of him being a Putin puppet, anytime he did anything towards peace, people would say, aha, look, he's not tough enough on Russia. He's a puppet of Russia. So his hands have been tied. And even to this day, where he sort of has to talk this line that, no one's been tougher on Russia than him. I'm not sure that's true, but I'm glad that, he's not being tough on Russia doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But, yeah. So I see where he's coming from, but I don't think it's completely accurate that no one's been tougher on him. But I think that's a good thing. But I think he sort of has to play the game. His hands have been tied. Seems the system really does want conflict with Russia. And you can see it all throughout when he's from his first term, even till now. Anytime he tries to make moves to make peace with Russia, the system, for the lack of a better term, sort of loses their mind. And that's sort of what we're seeing with him, trying to make peace and let Russia win.
No, I was tough. At the same time, I got along with Putin. I got along with Kim Jong-un. I got along with President Xi. But nobody was tougher, like on China, than I was.
And then there are reports now that Russia says it will help the United States negotiate a nuclear deal with Iran. What kind of a deal with Iran do you want to do? You said they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah. Well, there are two ways Iran can be handled, militarily or you make a deal. I would prefer to make a deal because I'm not looking to hurt Iran. They're great people. I know so many Iranians from this country.
Well, not the leadership.
No, not the leadership.
The people.
They're very evil people. No, but the people of Iran are great people. But they had a tough regime. And they'd meet and they'd be shot in the streets. I mean, it was a tough deal. But I would rather negotiate a deal. I'm not sure that everybody agrees with me, but we can make a deal that would be just as good as if you won militarily. But the time is happening now. The time is coming up. Something's going to happen one way or the other. I hope that Iran, and I've written them a letter saying, I hope you're going to negotiate, because if we have to go in militarily, it's going to be a terrible thing for them.
You wrote a letter to the Khomeini,
Yes.
the leader? When did you send the letter?
Yesterday.
And you said you better negotiate, or we want you to negotiate?
I didn't say you better. I said,
Okay.
I hope you're going to negotiate, because it's going to be a lot better for Iran. And I think they want to get that letter. The other alternative is we have to do something, because you can't let them have a nuclear weapon.
You said you wanted to do the Golden Dome. You've got a lot of ideas for America. But then earlier you said you wanted to cut.
Just before we move on to that, with the Iran deal, I have sort of a different opinion to Gary and probably a lot of people here in the chat about that. I was pretty happy with the deal that Obama had with Iran. That did put some sort of limits on Iran's sort of nuclear program, and Trump came in and ripped that up. And, so now he's sort of trying to do a new kind of deal, and I think Iran is refusing to talk to him. And, I hate to defend Iran or whatever, but from their perspective, they're probably like, look, we had a deal with America, and then America ripped it up. So, we're not too enthusiastic about doing another deal. We had one, and they reneged on it. And they probably think we have nothing to gain from these talks except to lose things. So they probably don't want to do a deal. So that's why Trump has sort of said, well, we either do a deal or maybe we have to do something militarily, which I worry about. I really don't want America to go to war with Iran. Russia has signified that they're interested in sort of mediating the talks. But as I said, I think Iran has said they're not interested in talking to Trump. So this could be a bit, could get a little bit hairy, but we won't get too much into that. I think now they're going to move on to Trump's defense sort of talks, because I think he's talked about, he's always talking about sort of improving the military. He sort of says he built up the military last time and then Biden let it go down or whatever. I'm not sure exactly of the reality of all of that. But I think she's asking about that versus his comments about sort of denuclearization, which we've talked about before, which I'm kind of a fan of, trying to talk about doing some kind of deal with Russia and China about maybe either not building any more nukes or sort of reducing their nukes or something like that. So she's sort of trying to tease out a contradiction between that and increasing the military budget, I think.
Dome, you've got a lot of ideas for America. But then earlier you said you wanted to cut $1 trillion in defense spending, right?
I didn't say I was.
You're not going to. So I was like, which is it? Are you cutting defense spending or are you building us up?
I never said defense spending.
Okay, because I think you were talking about denuclearization,
Correct.
and that's where the cutting of the spending came in.
I never said cut. No, it's not in these days. I'd love to cut defense spending, but not now, because you have China, you have Russia, you have a lot of problems out there. No.
In fact,
what I have said is we spend a lot of money on nuclear missiles, nuclear weapons. The level of destruction is beyond anything you can even imagine. It's just bad that everybody has to spend all this money on something that if it's used, it's probably the end of the world.
Wow. I don't know what to say to that.
You know, when I
mean,
listen.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Trump trying to reduce nukes with Russia and China, because that's a good point. If they get used, that's kind of the end of us in a way. I've started trying to do some news clips. So I've done two so far. I did one about, you might have heard there was some alleged spat between Elon Musk and other members in his cabinet, like Marco Rubio and I think the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy. So I did a little clip about that, which I'll play now. I also did one about one of the main subjects of tonight, which is the US talking with Hamas. But we'll get to the Elon Musk one first. Let me know what you think of this, because this is a new thing. I'm just mucking around. I've recorded this the other day. Clash between Elon Musk and Trump's cabinet. Musk said Marco Rubio hadn't fired anybody, but Rubio pointed to the 1,500 State Department officials who took early retirement in buyouts. The argument dragged on before Trump said everyone needs to work together. There was also some disagreement between Musk and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy over air traffic controllers. Cabinet officials generally support Musk's mission, but are concerned with Musk's chainsaw approach and lack of coordination, reported the Times. Trump supported Musk, but said it was time to be more refined in his approach. We say the scalpel rather than the hatchet, Trump posted on social media afterwards. But in response to questions from reporters about Musk and Doge moving too fast, Trump said, "No, I think they are doing an amazing job." Yeah, so that was something different. Yeah, so there has been some sort of follow-up on that, and Trump sort of downplayed that. I basically just sort of summarised that New York Times article, and they said they had 5 sources that were there, and they talked about this sort of thing, and it probably was exaggerated. And Trump said, "Look, there's no real problem there." Yeah, they had some sort of, they might have had some disagreements, but maybe it's sort of been blown out of proportion. Trump said there was no clash, so that's what he said there. But I was sort of just mucking around with. I might start doing little 50-second news clips about something. If Gary was here, I could play the clip, and then we'd be like, "All right, what do you think of that, Gary? What do you reckon?" Anyway, I did another one. Oh, before we move on, about the Iran deal, I guess Brian's talking about here, sending them pallets of cash when it was in no way a good deal for the US and definitely did not deter their nuclear program. Yeah, that's another point of view. And, but to be fair, it was Iran's money. It's not like America was sending them US money or whatever. They had sort of frozen Iranian money before the deal was made, where they sort of unlocked that. I dare say they'd probably be more deterred from their nuclear program with that deal than they are now, because now it's been ripped up. I mean, Iran probably thinks, well, we probably should get a nuke. We probably really should get a nuke. Like, we've watched America take out a lot of countries here in the Middle East. And, I don't want Iran to have a nuke, but you could probably understand why they might want one for defensive reasons. I mean, Israel has them, their enemy. Probably similar with North Korea. North Korea probably wanted to get nukes, looking around at all these leaders in Syria and Syria didn't have nukes. Libya, Iraq, various countries that didn't have that. There's probably more of a deterrent of being invaded having a nuke. So it's all dangerous kind of stuff. I hope it all works out, obviously. What was I going there? Saw your profile, said you're a singer. You're going to sing us out tonight. Not tonight, but I'm a little bit rusty with music. But one day, I might even make it a regular, well, maybe not a regular thing, but sometimes I might, just bust out the guitar and sing you a little song on the stream or whatever in future. But yeah, that'll be another story. I do have one song on Spotify. You guys probably won't like it. It's sort of like against the Israel war in Gaza, but if you check me out, Christopher Todd Nolan on Spotify, I'm there. I've just got the one song. I'm working on an EP of 5 other songs, and they're not political at all. It's kind of crazy actually. They're all just sort of uplifting, more personal, motivational kind of song. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. Where was I? Getting to the second clip I did, which is about these US-Hamas talks, which should be interesting to get into. So here's the latest Chris Nolan News Minute. That's not exactly the themes. Some people might find that uplifting, but not me. I kind of have a soft spot for the kangaroos, despite the fake news on this channel that, you know, I'm like abusive against kangaroos and koalas or whatever, whatever else. But yeah, some more news. Israel leaked information about US talks with Hamas to the media in order. US officials believe Israel leaked information about US talks with Hamas to the media in order to sabotage them, according to reports from Ynet News and the Times of Israel. According to the reports, Israel was not happy with the talks and found out about them after the fact. The US decided not to inform Israel about them because their opposition to previously planned talks caused them to be cancelled. Trump's hostage envoy, Adam Baylor, went ahead with the talks and reportedly discussed the 5 Israeli-American hostages. I think there is nothing more important to this country that even if the citizens are abroad, the country has their back, he said. The talks also touched on a general deal between Israel and Hamas for all other hostages to be released. A government official told the Times of Israel the leaks have served their purpose as the talks have since hit a snag. Israel opposes the talks out of concern the US might lose interest once all American hostages are released. Trump has since issued a strong public ultimatum for Hamas to release all the hostages, as well as confirming and justifying the talks.
We are having discussions with Hamas. We are helping Israel in those discussions because we're talking about Israeli hostages. I mean, I consider that something where we're helping Israel for the most part. We had a couple of hostages, as you know. We got a couple of hostages out, American hostages.
NBC also reported that Israel and others are wary of sharing intelligence with the US due to warming relations with Russia. Yeah, so we'll get into that because there's been a bit of updates. The hostage envoy has since done a few interviews, which we'll sort of go through. JJ said posting, not posting. I don't... I'm not sure. I have got a little icon here saying my connection's unstable. So let me know if we get any issues. Hopefully I'm still coming through okay. But anyway, so these talks, Israel doesn't seem too happy about them. And perhaps they're concerned that if America gets the 5, I think there's 1 and 4 dead Israeli-American hostages there, Israel might be worried that if Trump gets them out, then he mightn't be as concerned with helping Israel with their sort of war over there. But yeah, so they weren't too happy about that. And then the envoy, I said Adam Baylor. It's sort of spelled Bowler or something. But I actually asked Grok, I'm like, how do you pronounce Trump's US hostage envoy, Adam Baylor? How do you pronounce his last name? And it said, oh, you pronounce it Baylor. So that's why I said it in the video. But then in one of these interviews, they say Bowler. So maybe Grok lied to me on that one. But yeah, bear with me. I've got... So this hostage envoy that talked with Hamas, and it's sort of a big deal. I don't think America's ever talked to Hamas before. I have to double check that one, but not that I'm aware of. Have to bear with me using this sort of bootleg video. I couldn't find the actual video or the full video on the CNN website. Sorry, technical difficulties. There we go. All right. Yeah, because there's the talk of, but we shouldn't be negotiating with terrorists, you know. But, America's sort of talking to us. They say, as Trump said, on Israel's benefit. And, they haven't really given them anything. Anyway, I'll let the interview sort of play out.
U.S. hostage envoy Adam Bowler. Adam, thanks so much for joining us. Let's start on these direct negotiations with Hamas. First of all, obviously controversial to directly negotiate with terrorists. How much sign-off did you get from President Trump beforehand? And this is just my personal curiosity. As a Jewish American, did you have to steel yourself before sitting down to deal with people who are definitionally anti-Semitic murderers?
Well, I'd say meeting with people, whether they're good people or bad people, is part of my job. I'm the special envoy. I need to go and have dialogue with anybody, and that includes a lot of people that I would classify as not so good people. to help other Americans. And so it comes part and parcel in the job. I knew that I was going to meet Hamas as a result of it, and we discussed it. Then I think when you walk and you sit in front of somebody and you know what they've done, it's hard not to think of it. I wouldn't say it's the most productive. The most productive is to realize that every piece of a person is a human, and to identify with the human elements of those people and then build from there. But it definitely feels a little odd knowing what they really are.
So thank you for your candor. So you did get sign off from President Trump ahead of time, though?
Of course.
Yeah. What was the result of the meeting? How close are you to a deal to get the American hostages, living and dead, murdered, still in Gaza, out? How close are you?
Well, first of all, I want to note the American hostages that are there, one in particular that's alive, Adi Alexander, and 4 dead bodies of Americans, with about 50 killed. And that's just not acceptable. We live in the United States, the strongest country in the world, and there are 6,000 Americans in different countries. So one of my views here is we've got to change that completely. With respect to the Hamas situation, I do think there's hope. I think that Israel has done a wonderful, masterful job eliminating Hamas, Hezbollah, a number of other enemies in the state that makes things possible that weren't possible before. And I think you could see something like a long-term truce where we forgive prisoners, where Hamas lays down their arms, where they agree they're not part of the political party going forward. I think that's a reality. It's real close.
Do you have plans to sit down with Hamas again?
You never know. You know, sometimes you're in the area and you drop by.
All right. It's a very unique pop-in, I suppose. So you talked about the job Israel has done in trying to negotiate the release of the hostages, living and dead. Axios' reporter Barak Ravid is reporting the top Israeli official, Ron Dermer, strongly discouraged you from talking directly with Hamas. He said it was a tense phone call. Tell us about that. Do you understand why Netanyahu, Dermer, others might be upset?
I do understand. I spoke with Ron, and I'm sympathetic. He has someone that he doesn't know well, making direct contact with Hamas. Maybe I would see them and say, look, they don't have horns growing out of their head. They're actually guys like us. They're pretty nice guys. So he doesn't know me, and there are big stakes. He lives in a country where if it sets certain precedents, then it will hurt or help a lot of other people. So
that comment there, I think, has been misinterpreted as if he's saying Hamas are nice guys. But I'm pretty sure in the context he's saying the Israeli guy would be concerned that I'd meet Hamas and go, oh, these guys are nice guys. But he doesn't know me. That's not what's going to happen. I don't think he was actually saying Hamas are nice guys.
I understand the consternation and the concern, and I wasn't upset. At the same time, we're the United States. We're not an agent of Israel. We have specific interests at play.
That's quite a statement. We are the United States. We are not an agent of Israel. And this is responding to Israel trying to tell America not to do something, which I thought was great. I thought it was great. Sometimes I'm worried about America just sort of doing what Israel wants and not being independent enough. But this is good. It's true. We're not an agent of Israel. We'll sort of, if we want to talk with Hamas and there's a chance to get the American hostages out, and if we could do something to get some kind of a peace deal there, we'll do it. You know, I'm sure they'll listen to their allies, and he's got, you know, plenty of nice things to say about Israel, obviously. But just that line, I'm a big fan of it, and I'm sure Israel probably weren't a big fan of it, saying we're not an agent of Israel. Anyway.
And we did communicate back and forth. We had very specific parameters by which we fell. And the reality is what I wanted to do is jumpstart some negotiations.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on, JJ. It could be like, because this is the first time I've set up a stream. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. As I said, I couldn't get Rumble going. We don't have the Rumble people. We don't have, like, X didn't work. So we're just on Facebook and YouTube. And yeah, I don't know if my connection has something to do with it. Because we have had the the cyclone. Okay, I'll give you the cyclone update, all right? But we have had some funny weather. But yeah, I think the media sort of overplayed Cyclone Alfred. It's now known as ex-Cyclone Alfred, because before we even got here, it got degraded to, what they call it, a tropical low or something. Like, it's not even a cyclone anymore by the time it got here. There was a bit of flooding and rain further inland from me, but yeah, I think it was a bit of a media blow up, and people were panic buying, going to the shops and buying all the toilet paper they could and all stocking up on food because they might have a few days of rain. But anyway, I don't know. Wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, maybe it's Jason. He's not here. Haven't seen him here. Maybe he's doing something in the background, censoring JJ. I don't know. Bit of a comment. Suggestion there from A.M. Atkinson. I'm not really sure. But, I'm not sure what's going on with your comments not showing JJ.
That we're in a very fragile place. And I wanted to say to Hamas, what is the end game that you want here? Not the dream end game, but what do you think is realistic at this point? Because until we know that, it's very hard to reach some sort of truce or some sort of end to hostility. So in the end, I think it was a very helpful meeting. It was very helpful to hear some back and forth. But I think Israel knows walking out of that, it's not like Hamas got the world because I thought they were a bunch of nice guys.
Right. How quickly could something come together in terms of this negotiation?
I think something could come together within weeks. I will say that I believe there is enough there to make a deal between what Hamas wants and what they've accepted, and what Israel wants and it's accepted. And I think I think there is a deal where they can get all of the prisoners out, not just the Americans.
Yeah, so I actually went on a bit of a run. He had a few different interviews, including some Israeli interviews, like here. It's just a little
They
bit.
suggested exchanging all prisoners, and they suggested a 5-year to 10-year truce where Hamas would lay down all weapons, and where the United States would help, as well as other countries, ensure that there's no tunnels, there's nothing taken on the military side, and that Hamas is not involved in politics going forward.
As you see it today, how close are we to see all hostages released?
I mean, if I want to be optimistic, I would think weeks. They suggested exchanging all prisoners.
So that deal, bear with me. Israel won't be happy with a deal like that. Where Hamas are not all killed, basically. They just step back from power and sort of put down some weapons. I don't think Israel will like that. Israel don't like these talks in general. And as I showed in my little news clip, the report is that Israel leaked that information to the media to sabotage those talks, so America can't do any kind of deal with Hamas. I think they'd rather, I'd have to get into it, but as we've talked with, as I've debated with Gary on previous episodes, I'm pretty sure Israel just wants to flatten that whole area and kick all the Gazans out. So if America comes in and does some kind of deal where that doesn't happen, I don't think Israel will be too happy with it. So it'll be interesting to watch how Israel responds to this and if they try and put a spanner in the works. And I'd suggest to Americans that are quite fond of Israel to really think of how, just to watch that and just think about it. Just think about how great of an ally Israel is. Because for me, I see them more like Ukraine. Okay, they cause problems, they get heaps of money, they're basically completely dependent on America, and they're kind of ungrateful. But anyway, I don't need to get too far into that. I think I have another, another interview here.
To hold direct talks with the Hamas terror group. He sits down with our I-24 news correspondent, Amichai Stein, from our Hebrew channel to talk about the status of ongoing ceasefire negotiations with Hamas. Here's more from that interview.
Tell me, some Israeli officials are briefing us that the talks failed. What's your view about the success of these talks?
And remember, in my clip a while ago, some Israeli source was saying them leaking the talks to the media had served their purpose because the talks have failed.
I think that a conversation and a dialogue is very important. I can't say whether they failed or whether they didn't fail. I'm happy to see folks in Doha this week because I think dialogue is where you get places. It doesn't mean you give things up, but dialogue is where you get places. And so I think they might be hard pressed to say it failed based on that. But honestly, I'm hopeful that I was helpful to them.
Tell me, are you going to continue these meetings right now?
I think it depends quite a bit where things go. I think if things are actually on the right track, I have some hope for where this can go. And I think if it follows the right track, that would be great. I think there could be other meetings, even as it goes on the track, just to make sure that things stay on the right track. I've never found communication and dialogue bad. I found what people can give during that dialogue. And what you'll see is the United States does not give money to people. The United States uses a strong hand when we have people that have our citizens, and that includes allies like Israel. And so we're not going to get pushed around, I can tell you that. But we are going to get our people back.
How was the conversation between you and Minister Dermer? I understand it wasn't easy.
Ron explained to me some of his concern. I said that I understood the concern. I don't live right now in a country that is surrounded by people that want that country not to exist. And so I don't do that. And so for him to get frustrated or concerned when I'm engaging, I think it's totally normal. I hope based on my engagement that he knows me a little bit better and knows that I don't take Israel's existence as nothing. I always believe it's threatened. I love the country. It's a great ally, and I would never do something to hurt it. I hope what he takes is that I need to engage because there's people that I love, that you love, that we worry about every single day.
Tell me, how optimistic are you that a deal can be reached, sir?
I'm optimistic, and I know that sounds odd because it's gone on for a while. But the reason I'm optimistic is because the President of the United States, President Trump, was elected. It changed everything in the region. And I think between that and all of the unbelievable work that Netanyahu and Israel has done in destroying Hezbollah, in weakening Syria, in what they've done in Iran, all of these things have.
We might come back to that in a sec because, there's a lot of violence going on in Syria. And the Assad government falling and putting in this new government, which seems pretty radical, and sort of the leader was ex-Al-Qaeda, I'm pretty sure. Assad fell in part, at least, because, yes, Israel has weakened Hezbollah and Syria and Iran, because whether we like it or not, in Syria, fighting off sort of the ISIS, Al-Qaeda types was largely the Syrian government. It was Iran, including Soleimani, which Trump assassinated, and Hezbollah, the sort of the bad guys. And I think after the Syrian government did fall, Netanyahu put out sort of almost a gloating kind of tweet, basically saying, we did that, we took down the Syrian government because we smashed Hezbollah and Iran, and, because I forget exactly the way it works, but basically Syria was a conduit to send weapons from Iran to the various so-called proxies of Hezbollah and Hamas. At least Hezbollah. But anyway, that's a whole other tangent. We'll get back to this.
Have created a different Middle East than we had before. And so I think there's an answer here. And I think the answer is that Hamas lays down their arms, we exchange prisoners, and they go into a long-term truce where they don't fight. They're not part of any political
Let me try
party.
asking the question in another language, JJ.
And that gives us lots of cooling off time because there's a lot of families that are very angry at each other on both sides in that case. And then we...
Okay, Con, trying to work out this secret message of JJ's that apparently won't go through. I'll take a shot at JJ's question. He may have asked about the involvement with Iran and Hamas. How deep do you think Iran is involved, Chris? I really don't know. They seem at least somewhat involved. A lot lot of people say that Iran basically planned October 7. I'm not sure about that. But short answer is I don't really know for sure. But there are a lot of claims of very deep ties, and I think there are at least some. So it's probably a question of just how close they are. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly.
And we think about rebuilding Gaza. We've got to. We can't just have rubble. And so I think all those things can happen. And I think Hamas at this point is somewhat realistic about what is possible.
There was another interview here which seemed interesting because he sort of responded a bit more diplomatically to Israel's concerns somewhat, even though he did say, hey, we are not an agent of Israel, which is pretty baller in my opinion. But this one seemed a bit more... I'll just play it, see what you think about this one.
Israel didn't like it. You had a tough conversation with Dermer about it after they found out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really care about that much. No offense to Dermer. As I said,
That seems kind of crazy. But see, I haven't found the original of this interview, but is this the lady? Yeah, she says, I asked Trump envoy Adam Baylor about the difficult conversation with Dermer. His answer is pretty amazing. I don't really care about it. But I don't like that cut.
I don't really care about that much. No offense to Dermer.
What's with that cut?
I don't really care about that much. No offense to Dermer.
So I don't know. Just keep that in mind.
As I said, I don't mean to...
But I mean, as it says, I'm pretty sure this is the lady that asked him the question. And his response was, I don't really care about it. As if I don't really care about Israel being too concerned about what we're doing.
Injure Iran or anyone else, it's not my intent. And I also said, I understand Dermer's concerns. Dermer runs with Bibi a country that is on its own, where they are exchanging massive amounts of hostages for one person. And I will say, it's a lot of hostages. We wouldn't do that deal in the United States. So one, I respect and understand his position on that thing. However, we also have our own interests in the United States, and I believe and I hope some of those interactions can speed things up. But we worked together. We knew certain parameters. We went in those parameters. And so if every once in a while, if it was a big deal every time Dermer got a little bit upset, I think you may understand Ron might have a lot of big deals every day. I love Ron. We'll work together again. It was great. But no, I take no offense because I think he was doing what he was supposed to do.
So yeah, a little too many cuts in that clip for me, but yeah, that was kind of just that comment. I don't really care. And we are America. We do what are things for American interest. All right, so A. Mackinson says, according to a 2020 US Department of State report, Iran provides about $100 million annually to Palestinian militant groups, including Hamas. They said funding has supposedly increased. I don't deny that. It's probably true. But as I said, I haven't really looked into all that enough. Where was I going from here? Oh, there was more Israeli journalists are not too happy about it. Okay, the American who was directly negotiating for the release of the American hostages, 1 alive and 4 dead, ended in failure. According to the Israeli assessment, it's important to say that this is simply an unimaginable event for the first time. The Hamas organization, this murderous organization that was established about 30-something years ago as a Dawa organization, comes to the conclusion that it can talk to the President of the United States. Well, not directly, because it managed to release hostages, not because it surrendered. On the contrary, it's worse than that. I think now we can understand why they weren't so moved by Trump's threats to unleash hell on Gaza, because at the same time, they know that the special envoy of the President of the United States is coming and sitting with Hamas, with that guy, sorry, I missed a bunch of that, who has blood on his hands basically because of October 7th. So why would they be moved by Trump's promises to do what was that word? Something in the Middle East? I imagine that's what that's supposed to say. Expel Palestinians and destroy Hamas. They're going to tell themselves, I'm in a negotiation where they're talking to us. I was also struck yesterday by a headline that sees Hamas sees this dialogue as a key to increasing its legitimacy in the world now. In their twisted minds, it means, okay, you release the hostages and slowly receive embassies and normalization. That's not the situation, but Trump made a serious mistake here in Israel. They say this with all due respect, but with values and even more than that. But this event failed miserably. So, yeah, no, they're not too happy about it. And I guess some people might agree with some points there. But I generally don't, and I don't think Trump or his envoy does either. You know, I don't think they were going to roll over for Hamas in the talks. Because there's also, well, I was going to say it also comes with some pretty heavy threats. I guess the guy's saying the talks sort of cancel out the threats. But look, I'm always a fan with talks and negotiation, and you know, Israel has got a bunch of hostages back, and they went and they met Trump, and you know, Trump was obviously sort of moved by their plight. They were obviously treated pretty badly and malnourished and all that kind of stuff. But they're only free because of negotiations with Hamas. Israel bombing the whole area hasn't really got any hostages. In fact, they've killed some. So I understand why people are against negotiations, but, you know, it gets these people out, and I'm generally for it. Anyway. Do I have any more on that? I think there's a few more things on that, but I thought that's just an interesting story. We'll keep watching that in the future to see what happens there. I'd like all the hostages to come out and the violence to stop, and the Gazans to pick up their lives in Gaza, but we'll see how it goes. We might swing over to Syria. Okay, because there's obviously a lot going on in Syria. I'll just play a bit of a basic sort of overview from sort of a mainstream news source, but we'll, you know, that'll be a bit of an overview. Where are we? All right.
Days of sectarian bloodshed. Troops loyal to Syria's new leader try to re-establish control. Rifles drawn, tanks ready to fire in the coastal area of Latakia. It is the heartland of Syria's Alawite minority, who dominated the nation under Bashar al-Assad, and many are still loyal. When they ambushed government forces, it triggered a furious response, with tit-for-tat killings sweeping through the region.
Thank God, security and safety have been gradually restored. God willing, we will continue to hunt down the remnants of the regime until security and safety returns to the coast.
To crush the rebellion, the interim government has deployed soldiers and militiamen from all over the country. But this ramshackle force has terrorized the residents, and hundreds of Alawites have been killed, their bodies reportedly lying in the streets. Witnesses told Sky News of targeted executions.
They dragged the man out of the house, his wife and son to the floor, cursed them and called them Alawite pigs. They shot the man first, dragged the daughter to the floor, yelled at her and slapped her again and again. Then they made her brother stand facing the wall and shot him in the head.
They killed my relatives, my uncle, his wife, and my cousins of my mother's sister and brother. I don't know what to say. The bodies are scattered on the streets. You see bodies of children aged 1 or 2 years old. It's just indescribable. Bodies of women, children, elderly people, indescribable. Those are not Assad loyalists. We are not Assad loyalists. They killed us for the mere reason of being Alawites, just because we're Alawites.
The former rebel turned president, Ahmad al-Sharaa, made a plea for national unity during a visit to a mosque in the capital, Damascus. Anyone who harmed civilians would be severely punished, he said.
What is currently happening in Syria represents the type of expected challenges. We must preserve national unity, and we can live together, God willing, in unity in this country.
Here we see al-Sharaa's men drawn from a number of Sunni Muslim groups, burying their dead in northwest Syria. At least 200 of their number have been killed, and many seem bent on revenge. The country now grappling with the prospect of a far larger war.
If it was not for the pure blood of these martyrs, the Assad loyalists would have committed even more horrific acts. But we swear before God that we will make them taste what we endured 200 times, 2,000 times.
Syria's transitional authority said everybody would be safe under its rule, but that's a promise it's been unable to keep in a volatile nation awash with arms. John Sparks, Sky News.
Yes, that's just a basic overview. It seems quite complicated, and I haven't really had the time to delve into. Bear with me. I haven't had the time to delve into all the details, because you might have heard that, you know, the Syrian government's going around and massacring Christians and Alawites and things like this. And there's some horrific videos out there. And it should be noted that this new government does seem quite extreme. You know, I'm pretty sure their leader, he ruled Idlib, and all throughout the war against Assad, there were all kinds of atrocities. I'm sort of oversimplifying in a way, because there were different factions of rebels fighting against Assad, but generally most of them were sort of jihadis, ISIS, al-Nusra, which is basically al-Qaeda in Syria. I think they changed names a few times. The US was sort of funding so-called moderate rebels and giving them weapons, and even Toyota trucks. You might have known. Remember the ISIS traveling with all those Toyota trucks? I'm pretty sure. Well, I do know that the US supplied Toyota trucks to the moderate rebels in Syria in 2013, and then we see ISIS with Toyota trucks soon after. I think it's 2014. That's that whole decade-long thing is just atrocious. I remember seeing some footage from these so-called rebels where they kidnapped a young boy from a hospital. Apparently his dad was like an Assadist. So these rebels kidnapped this boy. He was in the back of the truck, and they cut his head off and held it up. But, you know, there was another one of other rebel groups. They killed an Assad soldier and cut his heart out and ate it on video. You know, a lot of savages. And in a way, it seems the government is sort of headed up by these people. So when I hear these stories of these massacres going on by this new government, I'm not surprised at all. But I think there is a bit more to the story. But I'm reluctant to say too much, because I haven't really looked into it too much. Because there was talks of sort of Assad supporters fighting against the government in a way, and then this is sort of like a retaliation in a way, because it's in Latakia, it's in the Assad strongholds against the Alawites, of which Assad was, and they're sort of a bit more sympathetic with the previous government. So it's very confusing, because I don't want to sort of downplay all these massacres that are going on by the government. I'm not saying they're justified or anything, but I think there is a more complex story of, a bit of an uprising, like just a... Where is it? I had something here. Yeah, because this is apparently by Bashar al-Assad's cousin, sort of saying that this sort of uprising by sort of an Assad supporter against sort of the government people wasn't a good idea. As I said, this doesn't justify the massacres that are going on, but it's like, some people try and spin it as if this new government is just sort of trying to put down violence against them and trying to bring stabilization to the country. I don't think that's very fair, but there is something there, And there is a bit of fake news about all this kind of stuff. Bear with me. I was sort of rushing to get all this ready. But you might have seen this video. I won't play the video. There's some horrific videos going around. This guy basically gets executed in this very graphic video of his head getting blown off, basically. He's sort of tied to a cross and shot. And it's been presented as if a new video, but this is actually from, I think, 2017. All right, here we go. Hang on. Got to back up. We've got some interesting comments in the chat, which I should address. All right. I'm trying to be... It's kind of funny. I'm getting accused of being pro-Israel here, okay? So I got this earlier. Chris is Israeli, therefore he has bias. Maybe it's the shirt. I worry about wearing the shirt sometimes because it's the Israeli colours, but that's just a coincidence, okay? I've got red shirts, I've got blue shirts, but I'm definitely not Israeli. I'm not a fan of Israel. on this channel, I've had many debates with Gary. In fact, I'm trying to be nice in Israel because I know this chat generally likes Israel. So I'm trying not to go too hard on the paint. But I'll obviously have to correct this a little bit. I'm being a bit too nice to Israel, so I'm going to go pretty hard on Israel in the next 2 minutes just to prove my anti-Israel cred. Okay? And we have a fair bit of... what else was there? Bear with me. A few comments about me Jew-splaining. Okay? Like I'm... where are I? Bear with me. Yeah, so is this one... Yeah, I mean, wasn't I just talking about... Okay, I obviously don't like the term Jew-splaining, and if anything, I was talking about how these rebels, supported and funded by Israel, by the way, gas entire towns, they blamed it on Assad, you might remember. What else was there? Anyway, but it's for the first time I've being accused of being too pro-Israel, which I always find funny. But maybe as a reminder that I'm being a little bit too soft on Israel, because I did have, as I mentioned earlier, Netanyahu basically gloated about taking out Assad and putting in the new extremist government now that's supposed to be going around, that is going around killing Alawites and Christians. I've heard reports of them killing hundreds or even thousands of people in brutal ways. I'm just trying to give a little bit of nuance because some of it is fake news, like that video I just showed you. But you basically have an extremist government of jihadis supported by Israel, America, Turkey, Saudi Arabia. They helped them, Remember Obama said Assad must go. There are a lot of people in that. A lot of people have blood on their hands with the new government that are in there. And it's, I've commented on previous shows when the government fell. It was kind of a tragedy. Anyway. Yeah, that's what I find funny. What else we got? Yeah, I appreciate that. I generally, I do speak from my heart and just try to keep it real. She's playing the nuts floated all right. Okay. Welcome, Jones. Glad you're here as well. But yeah, Netanyahu.
This is a historic day for the Middle East.
He's happy with it.
The collapse of the Assad regime, the tyranny in Damascus offers great opportunity, but also is fraught with significant dangers. This collapse is a direct result of our forceful action against Hezbollah and Iran, Assad's main supporters. It set off a chain reaction of all those who want to free themselves from this tyranny and its oppression. But it also means we have to take action against possible threats. One of them is the collapse of the Separation of Forces Agreement from 1974 between Israel and Syria. This agreement held for 50 years. Last night it collapsed. The Syrian army abandoned its positions. We gave the Israeli army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found. Equally, we send a hand of peace to all those beyond our border in Syria, to the Druze, to the Kurds, to the Christians, and to the Muslims who want to live in peace with Israel. We're going to follow events very carefully. If we can establish neighborly relations and a peaceful relations with the new forces emerging in Syria, that's our desire. But if we do not, we'll do whatever it takes to defend the state of Israel and the border of Israel.
So, yeah, Israel definitely... I'll show some more things later if I can remember, but there are reports during the war against Assad that Israel was supplying weapons to the jihadis, moderate rebels trying to overthrow Assad. They gave them medical care. The Israeli foreign minister said something to the effect of, we would rather ISIS be in Syria than Iran, because Iran is helping Syria. So they're basically saying they'd rather ISIS take over Syria than leave it in the hands of Assad. They definitely... and just a little side fact, ISIS has never attacked Israel, except once, accidentally, and they apologise. So make of that what you will, I'm not saying anything about that. But then we have Ben Shapiro also, when the government fell. I'll play the whole thing in context, but I think the most important line is at the very end where he says, net, it's a good thing. He sort of says, yes, Christians might suffer by this new extremist government that they helped put in power. Look, I don't want to be, let me Jews playing again and sort of let Israel, be fair against Israel. They weren't the only ones supporting this government. You have British politicians, straight away Germany's in there shaking hands with this guy. What else did I have? A bunch of people were involved in this, but including Israel. And I would dare say Israel is probably the greatest beneficiary of the Assad government falling. So here's Ben Shapiro sort of talking about it. He didn't seem too worried. I mean, Netanyahu was happy. Ben Shapiro's pretty happy as well. He thinks net it's a good thing, even though it might be a bit rough for the Christians. Oh, sorry, hang on.
Okay, there were significant human rights predations against Christians on the ground, not only in the areas controlled by Sunni terrorists, but also in the areas that were controlled by Shia terrorists. Syria is about 10% Christian. Okay, so is it about to get worse? It definitely could, which would, of course, be a terrible thing. And then you have the question of what Bashar al-Assad was doing to the country, which is killing hundreds of thousands of people using everything up to and including chemical weapons. Well, he's gone now, and Israel has been striking a lot of the chemical weapons depots to prevent them from falling into the hands of the new rebel alliance over.
It is interesting that in the north there's this violence going on where it seems like the government is massacring people by the looks of it. And Israel's sort of invading from the south, and they're doing a lot. Okay? And even during the whole war, Israel was constantly bombing Assad. Many in the regions actually referred to the Israeli Air Force as the ISIS Air Force because they were helping him so much. ISIS didn't have an Air Force, but they'd launch their ground attacks. Israel would come in with the air attacks against the same enemy, Assad, who's now gone. Anyway,
over here. Okay, so. Again, is any of this wonderful? It isn't. But the one thing that is an upside is that the Iranian crescent is dead. Okay, the Shia crescent that, again, stretched all the way from.
He's relevant because it shows that Israel had a hand in putting in this extremist government, and he says it's a good thing. Net, it's a positive that the government has fallen, even though Christians might suffer. Net, it's a positive because it's good for Israel. That's why it's relevant. I thought you'd be happy about that. No. Happy about the coverage of that. Anyway.
From Iran all the way across to Lebanon. That is now dead. What does that mean? It means the Iranian regime is actually in quite real trouble here. All of their biggest proxies are gone. Hamas, gone. Hezbollah, gone. Assad, gone. That means the Shia influence game is beginning to wane. It's beginning to end. The Houthis are basically isolated down there in Yemen. The Shia regime in Iran still has impact in Iraq. But internally, they are much, much, much weaker right now. So the border countries, what are they doing? Turkey is doing incursions into northern Syria. They were probably behind much of what's going on right now. They're attempting to grab territory in northern Syria. They're creating their own buffer zone. They're attempting to encroach on Kurdish territory, again, in the northeast of the country. Meanwhile, Israel in the south has the Golan Heights. And anybody, by the way, who thought that it was a good idea for Israel to give up the Golan Heights, yeah, you're an idiot. Okay, it's a good thing Israel has the Golan Heights. Otherwise, you'd have Sunni terrorists sitting up top over the Lake Tiberias and firing down into the valley in Israel. Okay, so Israel controls that area. They've been moving up into their own buffer zone over at Mount Hermon, which is in Syria. It's kind of the strategic height of the region. Okay, meanwhile, again, you have the Syrian government, which has now abdicated. They are turning over control to this rebel alliance. Unclear exactly what's going to result. Because again, you still have all of these players on the ground who are fighting one another. They may be united against Assad, but now Assad is gone. So Assad's family is out. The rebels, again, arrived in Damascus. Meanwhile, you have the Kurds who are still controlling a large swath of territory. What does it really mean? It means that Russia is weak. Iran is weak. These were paper tigers. And their attempts to invade Ukraine and invade Israel, respectively, those went really poorly for them. What you are watching is the complete collapse of the Russian-Iranian alliance in Syria, and it is indicative of the interior weakness of these countries. which is something to remember going forward. President Biden said this is the first time ever either Russia nor Iran or Hezbollah could defend a foreign regime in Syria. This is the direct result of the blows Ukraine and Israel delivered. This is what he said in a statement. No thanks to Joe Biden, by the way, who's continuing to slow walk weapons to both Ukraine and also to Israel. So if it had been up to Joe Biden, presumably those allies never would have been properly armed. But it is a very good thing and indicative, again, of the weakness of Russia and Iran, what has happened in Syria. Now, net, I think it'll probably be a good thing. But there are no great things in the Middle East. It just doesn't exist. A lot of bad people in a lot of areas in the Middle East.
Net, probably a good thing.
More than 1,000 people were killed as violent clashes erupted between Syrian security forces and loyalists of ousted longtime President Bashar al-Assad. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, a UK-based war monitor, added that the clashes marked one of the deadliest acts of violence in over a decade. Clashes erupted between Assad supporters and forces of the new interim Syrian government on Thursday in the country's western coastal regions. Assad enjoyed the support of Alawites for decades, who were predominantly based in the coastal areas in cities like Latakia. On Friday, Sunni Muslim gunmen launched retaliatory revenge killings against members of Assad's minority Alawite sect. Hundreds were killed as gunmen reportedly opened indiscriminate fire at homes in Alawite regions, looted and set them ablaze. The incident marks a major blow to the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group, who toppled Assad in early December in a surprise rebellion. The international community has called on all parties to exercise restraint and respect the rights of all Syrians, regardless of personal and religious beliefs.
Yeah. So as I said, I haven't really had time to delve into all the massacres, but like, it seems quite horrific, and the videos I've shown haven't really even come close to representing the horror that seems to be going on over there. So I do apologise I don't have enough prepared on that. But I think I'll look more into it and probably, have a bit more of an update exactly what's sort of going on. But just this whole idea to topple Assad that a lot of people, America, Israel, all kinds of people were involved in, was kind of a horrific thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if, they commit all kinds of massacres like they seem to be doing at the moment. What's interesting, because the EU put out a statement, I don't think I'll be able to find it. As I said, there's sort of a bit of a rush trying to put all this together for tonight. But I had a link here somewhere about in response to this, where it seems like this new government has committed all kinds of massacres. The EU has invited him to come and speak. And they put out a statement denouncing violence from the Assadists. Not the government killing Alawites and Assad supporters or whatever. They condemn the violence against this government that seems to be doing these massacres. So I don't think I can find... Yeah, I don't have it handy here. But I may as well. Just a little side note. Totally not related or anything, but you might have seen this. This must be some Israeli politician, right? Giving some kind of a statement about Israel, his home country. Right? No. Actually, it's Rick Scott. No American flag to be seen. I'm curious what people here would think about this. Like, why is there no American flag, but there's some other country's flag there? And he's just talking about daylight savings. But even Thomas Massey's like, what's up with that? He'll be one to watch. AIPAC, he's spoken about against AIPAC, the Israel lobby, and he's sort of been targeted by them. And some other lobby sort of said, forget the exact details, but they are going to try and work against him because he doesn't really go along with Israel all the time. Well, I just thought this was interesting because even all the comments, they're based like, what is with that flag? Like pretty much, maybe I should, who knows what's going to, exactly. What if it was China's flag? Anyway, pretty much every comment is like, what is with that flag? Anyway. I think I might start wrapping it up. That's not too bad on my own, a bit over an hour 15. Might just leave you. I won't have time to get into the full details of this, but just a bit of local Australian news to finish with, because I'm sure you Americans just love to know what's going on in Australia. A while ago, we passed all kinds of hate speech laws. I haven't looked into all the details, but it's against hate speech, which, you know, should be free speech, really. And using Nazi symbols, having mandatory jail sentences, you know. And it was passed in part because there was sort of a terrorist plot in Australia. I think this is what this video is talking about. I didn't have to actually check it, but I think this is what it's talking about. This is the New South Wales Premier, Chris Minns. Basically, they passed laws because of this terrorist plot in a caravan that was supposedly an anti-Semitic sort of terrorist plot against Jews that was foiled. And soon after we passed these hate crime laws and all kind of stuff, restricting freedom of speech and all kind of horrible stuff, really, since it turned out it was a complete false flag, basically. It wasn't a real threat. It was sort of made to look like it was anti-Jewish, but it wasn't. Anyway.
Clearly, police are very concerned, and the community is very concerned about the rising number of anti-Semitic attacks in our community, escalating to the point where there was a mass casualty event.
Today, I can reveal that the caravan was never going to cause a mass casualty event, but instead was concocted by criminals who wanted to cause fear for personal benefit.
Clearly, police are very...
And, you know, she goes on to say a lot more. You know, I won't go too heavy on that. It was just kind of interesting. We passed all these laws restricting freedom of speech because of like a fake false flag kind of terror plot that wasn't even a terror plot. And even though it turns out it was fake, we're probably stuck with these laws. But yeah, anyway, I think that should do it. I think that wasn't too bad. I wasn't sure about doing a show all by myself. It was sort of last minute that, yeah, Gary couldn't make it. But he should be back for the next one. We will be back here Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That's Friday morning at 11 Australian time for me. Yeah, it's a little bit rough. Because we don't actually really have like a First Amendment. We sort of have some kind of hope that the government, they probably wouldn't restrict freedom of speech, but I don't think there's really anything stopping them other than like democracy. Anyway, but anyway, thanks for being here. We should be back to our regular scheduled programming on Thursday at 8 p.m. So join us then. I hope you all have a wonderful night. And that should about do us. Take care of yourselves, and yeah, I'll see you next time.